Eagles Entertainment.
Eagle Eye in the Sky is fueled by Gatorade, the official sports drink of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Anything that move, I don't care who it is. Let's go. Give me everything you got. Play fast, play hard. Let's meet these boys tonight in their house. It's party time. It's party time. Here we go. Touchdown!
You are listening to the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. Now here's your host, Fran Duffy.
That's right, another week, and we are talking wide receivers this week as the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade, continues. I'm Fran Duffy, and as always, I think we've got a great show for you here on episode number 251. At the top of this week's show, we've got Chalk Talk, where I chat with a guy who was a bit of a thorn in the Eagles' side for a majority of his career. That's former New York Giants great wide receiver Amani Toomer. I had a chance to catch up with Amani this offseason down at the East-West Shrine Bowl, and he was gracious enough to chat with me about the wide receiver position. We hit on everything from snap to finish when it comes to playing successful football from that spot. Really good takeaways here from Amani. So let's not waste any more time. Let's dive into our chat now. It's time for Chalk Talk.
Let's get down to business. It's time for Chalk Talk.
We're really happy to welcome into Chalk Talk on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade, the leading receiver all time in the history of the New York Giants, Amani Toomer. Amani, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Unfortunately, I'm talking with the Eagles, but hey, that's okay.
That's all right. We can forgive some things. You know, we're just talking ball here. So
yeah, definitely.
We're down here at the East-West Shrine Bowl in St. Petersburg, Florida, and you're here working with a lot of these guys as they're getting ready for their transition to the NFL. Just talk about what it's like kind of getting on the field and working with these guys face to face.
Well, I'm just really excited the fact that getting a chance to come back in and see the up and coming talent, a chance for these kids to really show what they can do and show off their talents to the pro scouts. And a lot of people say, "Oh, the game's getting easier, it's getting softer." Man, you look at some of the looks on these kids' faces and how bad you can tell they really want it. It's the same game, same attitude, and the same kind of drive that's getting these kids out here and getting them, out here just trying to show their stuff.
Sure, no question. Is there a part of playing wide receiver that, maybe a lot of fans, a lot of media don't necessarily talk about, but is really in your mind one of the most important parts to playing the position and leading to success?
There's so much to it that a lot of people think you're just running around. There's there's the body lean. There's how to get off the line of scrimmage. There's how to get in and out of breaks. There's how to set people up, set people's hips. Press your depth. There's so many things to actually being a wide receiver that I think a lot of these kids don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm down here to try to just sprinkle a little bit of knowledge on. There's a lot more to it than just what you see.
Yeah. Well, we'll start. I want to go almost snap to finish here and just talk about kind of building a receiver from the ground up. When you're talking about a guy kind of coming out of his stance, what should a guy look like? If you're coached up correctly.
Well, I think playing receiver is like a baseball swing, right?
Okay.
Like everybody is going to swing the ball different. Everybody's going to stay in the stance in their stance different. It's like throwing a football. Everybody's going to throw it differently. You got to get them to. There's a certain amount of parameters that you have to do to maximize efficiency, right? The most important thing that I would teach these receivers, is the get off. Getting off the ball is such a big deal in terms of putting that immediate pressure on a defensive back. And the get off is very, very important, especially for bigger receivers because it's harder for us to get everything, with all the momentum going. So yeah, it's I think the most important initially thing is the start. Like I'd take the route from you get the play, go to the line of scrimmage. You're checking you check your alignment, you check the formation, the pre-snap read. Then you're looking in at the ball because usually you don't know the snap count. So there's a lot of things going on just to get to the snap. And then once the snap happens, then you got to look at the defense, see what their post-snap read is. You got to peek the defense, and then you get into your route. Because sometimes there's adjustments depending on if it's cloud, single high, or or quarters coverage or man. So there's a lot to it.
Yeah. So how quickly do you kind of have to process that and kind of make an adjustment off of that?
These processes are supposed to take place probably all within 3 seconds.
Right.
Yeah.
It's insane. I remember talking with even like guys like Seth Joyner about linebackers and all the things that are going, like the mental Rolodex of information you've got to kind of process before the snap and then right at the snap to be able to key and diagnose exactly what's happening. So now take us through the route. Obviously, there's a bunch of different routes that guys are running, but what are some of the things to you that are so important in terms of being able to successfully be a good route runner?
I think you have to getting upfield and putting that pressure, because what scares the defensive back more than anything else is trying to beat them deep, getting beat deep, because that's a touchdown. That's when you get embarrassed,
right? Sure.
Called out, whatever.
It's a big play league.
It's a big play league. So getting down the field, and then getting off the ball if there's press, as opposed to if it's man.
Yeah.
Setting people up. If it's a certain type of man, you got to kind of set their hips. You got to attack their technique and get them to go in a direction opposite of where you want to go. I think that's a lost art. A lot of people set people up as well. They just try to run as fast as they can. If you're really, really fast, you can get away with it. If for against most people, but against the best, you're talking about the high end, top end corners that you're going to be playing against.
Who was that for you?
I mean, I played against Dion. I played against, Bobby. I think I played against Champ. I played against Revis. I played against. I mean, they were all nameless to me. I felt like the right technique would beat anybody, and I was very successful at that.
Were you a guy that, trying to maintain separation? You almost have to get. You talk about attacking their technique. Yeah. You try to get close to them first to try and pull away, or were you someone that tried to maintain as much separation as possible?
No, you have to. I mean, it depends on the route, but what you have to do is really focus on their hips. Focus on where they're, trying to set their hips in a direction to where you're going to go the opposite direction. And, so I would never, I mean, sometimes you want to be far away from them, sometimes you want to be close. It's just, and you got to be able to be successful in either. So I never really thought about how close the defender was to me.
Gotcha.
Because I was a big body guy, so if he was too close, I could always move. I could always, position myself in and box out the defensive back, and create the separation that I needed.
One thing watching these college kids coming up into the NFL is trying to defeat press coverage. What are some of the important things that you need to be able to do to be able to defeat press?
It's different for every guy. I mean, some guys are just quick enough where it's not really an issue, but for the bigger receivers, that's usually their struggle. To get off the line of scrimmage cleanly. Yep. And you can get off the line of scrimmage and it's not as you want to come out of the situation where you're coming off the line of scrimmage with an advantage, not coming out of the situation like just even, where like they're side by side or a little bit behind you. You want them to be like trying to actively catch up. So. I mean, there's hundreds of a myriad ways of getting off the line of scrimmage, and a receiver's job is to find out which way works best for them. Yeah, and that's why they're all out here.
Sure.
I'm sure most of these guys never got pressed against a corner that is a starting caliber NFL corner.
Sure.
Because it's a whole different playbook. I remember I was the third receiver, and I'd play against the nickel corners.
Yeah,
and I'd have great success. And then I got a chance to start, and then I was the second guy. Then I was the first guy. And once you become the first guy, and you're playing against every team's top corner, there's a different level of thinking that has to go through, because these guys are thinking right with you. So you got to set them up in all different areas, and you always got to be thinking the game and releases are something that I really enjoy playing with the defensive back's head. They try to figure it and try to get them thinking I was going to do something.
Did you have like a move that was especially like one of your go-tos, getting off the line, like using your hands?
I did like using my hands, but I mean, my go-to move was, I mean, it's one of those things I really didn't try to think about it that much.
Got it.
I had my techniques, and as soon as the defender would react in a certain way, I knew the different. Like if he was going to do one hand, I knew how to get around that. Two hands, I knew I wanted that. If he was going to quick jam me, I knew that. There's all these different things that you just do over in your head, so that when they happen, it's a reaction. Not you don't think about it.
Sure. What's the most important athletic trait for a receiver? You talk about body control. We talked long speed, short area quickness, change of direction. What's the most important athletic trait?
Getting it in out of breaks.
Okay.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Being able to run full speed in a direction.
Yep.
And then slow down, turn, and get back to full speed. That's all of what being a receiver is.
Right.
I mean, everybody talks about long speed and all this stuff. Jerry Rice wasn't super fast, but he could run full speed, turn direction, and get back to full speed faster than anybody I've seen before, even at an older age, because we used to work out together in San Francisco. So that was the thing that I was impressed about him mostly. But besides all that, that's the route running aspect.
Yeah.
The most important thing that a receiver has to do is catch the ball.
Right. Now, I was going to ask you next was, do you feel that ball skills, the ability to kind of track it and contort your body to the football, is that something that's coachable, or do you kind of have that or you don't? If you see a guy in college, if you're watching a kid and he doesn't have it, do you feel like, okay, I can kind of coach that into him? Or
I think you can coach anything
Okay.
as a receiver. You can't coach body control, and you can't coach speed.
Got it.
Everything else you can teach.
Interesting. All right. So if you put your NFL scout hat on, you're watching a lot of these kids, and you see look, this kid, he may not have speed, he may not have the body control, all the other stuff. I feel like I can coach up. Did you trend more towards adding players that have the speed and it's just a lot of work everywhere else, or that have some of those other skills that can be taught, but he's more ready-made right now?
Well, look, this isn't a developmental league.
Yeah. Yep.
So what I would look for most is speed.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because you can coach all the rest of the stuff.
Yep.
I want the complete package.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
you ask me what I want. I want to build everything. But if I'm going to err on something, I'm going to err on. Well, it also depends on what situation I'm in as a staff, right?
Okay, sure.
Or what I have existing on my roster. If I have a roster that has a couple guys that can take him under his wing, he's not going to have to play right away, then that's one person I'm going to take. But then if there's somebody who has to come in and play and contribute for me right away because, my head coach is about to get fired and our whole staff is about to change their address, that's a whole different kind of process too. So I really have to know what I'm in for. So I'm in for the high end, like the long game, or am I in for just making sure that I get a guy on that can contribute right away and don't care if he hasn't. If he maxed out his ability, he's maxed out. We're going to get rid of him in a couple of years anyway.
When you played and young kids came in as rookies, how quickly did it take for you to kind of see like, all right, this guy's got it or he doesn't have it?
Very easy.
Really?
I mean, you could tell somebody's can run routes probably, or has the right mindset to run routes probably in. To me, it took me like, because I know what it should look like.
Right, sure.
You know what I mean? It's
sure.
like I don't know much about quarterbacks, but I know what it looks like.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, I don't know much about home run hitting, but I know if I see a swing, I'm like, that would probably knock a home run out. And so it doesn't take that long to me.
Is there and without getting too deep into the weeds, when you're out here, in this environment, without talking about specific players, have you seen a couple guys where like, yeah, like this guy, he's got it? Like,
There's some guys where I was like, I go over and I talk to some of the guys. I'm like, man, this guy can really play, and they're like, but we got to fit. Can he run? Can he do this? And I don't know all that stuff. I just know what I see on the field.
Sure.
And being able to open it up is the long speed is something that you can't tell.
Yeah.
But then also there's some guys that like, or long striders, you can't tell how fast they are. Some guys just run so smoothly that they look like they're moving slow, and the ground is moving fast. So I think it'd be tough here. That's why the combines and the 40s and all that stuff are so important, because you need all that information to put it together to kind of see how they would translate to the next level. Because right now they're playing against college guys.
Sure.
So these guys are mostly guys that are, they're college guys.
Yep.
It's a different level when you go to the next level.
You said that you were a guy that played both inside, outside. What are some of the differences from a mental standpoint, and even a physical standpoint, that you need to have to be able to do either job?
I think they're the same. I think being receiver is being receiver.
Got it.
I'm not into all the inside slot receiver. To me, if you're good at receiver and you know your technique, you can play it anywhere.
And now it's such a positionless league now, where you see guys all the time that are oh, this guy's the quote-unquote number one receiver. I think that's what people would have called him 15, 20 years ago. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald's been in the slot mostly for the last 5 years. Antonio Brown in Pittsburgh was in the slot majority of the time. Like,
I think when you think of play calling, like I listen to or the number one, right?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of overrated as well because like, if you're a number one, you don't have somebody next to you, like a 1 and a 1A, they can take you out of the game.
Right.
They can take anybody, one player out of the game. You know, you gotta have other people to keep you honest, to say, like, oh, we can't take away this guy because the other guy on this other side is going to help you out.
Was it more frustrating for you as a big-time receiver to deal with one great corner or to deal with bracket coverage against the corner that maybe individual bracket all the time?
Yeah. I mean, there was a couple years there where it was just like, all I'd see was 2 on my side. You know what I mean? And I was like, wow. And then it's not like that I couldn't beat them.
Sure,
It's not that you can't beat them every once in a while. But the problem is like, your quarterback's going to get off you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because basically, the other side of the defense is where the ball should go. You know, the offense is designed to get to the easiest, the easiest path, the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance probably isn't the place where the two people are covering one person.
Sure. And the last question for you is just, as you've been watching the game, since you've retired, what have been some of the biggest differences you've seen from playing the position, even the passing game? What are some of the biggest changes you've seen that maybe you miss, or maybe you're like, man, I wish I kind of had that when I was playing?
Well, the pass interference rules. Okay. Wow. And then you can't hit the receivers. Wow.
Right.
Going across the middle now is like, it's not a business decision anymore. It's like, okay, well, at least I'm gonna get 15. You know what I mean? Somebody hits me too hard, but or the pass interference. But I don't know. I just think that it's a different game. The game's been better. There's more scoring. It's more exciting. It's way more fun probably to be a receiver than it was in my day when you throwing the ball maybe 25, 30 times a game. Now it's 30, 40 times is more normal than an anomaly. I think they just think pass more, which I think it's more fun to watch. Yeah,
well, Amani, really appreciate the time here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade. Best of luck the rest of this week. And we'll talk
go Giants.
Soon.
And
of course, he had to sneak in the Go Giants there at the end. Great stuff from Amani, who you could follow just like I do on Twitter at Amani A. Toomer. And while you're at it, I'm at Eagles XOs. That's where I post all the podcasts I'm a part of and all of our X's and O's content that we produce at PhiladelphiaEagles.com. And you know how much I appreciate everybody that promotes this podcast on all forms of social media. That's one way to support the show. But the other way is to go into Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, give us a rating, and even leave us a comment. Look, we're around the corner, hopefully, from the start of training camp. Only a couple more weeks here until the 2020 season in some way, shape, or form begins to kick off. So if you've got an idea that you want to talk, something that you want to hear talked about here on the show, now's your time. Right before we start to get a sense of what this season could look like, now you can sneak onto our Apple Podcast page, leave us a rating, leave us a question, and we'll try and see if we can sneak it in here onto a future show before the start of 2020 training camp. So thanks so much to everybody already who has gone on and left some of those ratings and reviews, but I want to call to action here. If you've got time, go on, leave us a review. Great way to support the show as we get closer to the start of the 2020 season. All right, just some quick takeaways for me from that interview with Amani Toomer. And, I go back, I can't take notes when I'm on the scene with these guys, at the stadium, in the dugout, at the Devil Rays Stadium, in the Tropicana Field, in that environment. But I went back and just listened and took notes from that conversation just to kind of for some key takeaways. To me, one of the biggest ones was one of the first ones we talked about was the art of separation. I loved that from Amani Toomer, and he's talking about the importance of getting a defender's hips flipped and ways to kind of attack the technique of the defensive back. And it's funny, I completely forgot that was a center point of that conversation. I talked about that a lot on a recent Film Room segment presented by Chickies and Pete's, where I broke down Eagles' first-round pick, Jalen Reagor, because I feel like that's an area that Jalen Reagor really, really worked well at during his time at TCU, not just this past year as a junior, but the year before as a sophomore. So if you haven't already, make sure you go check out that segment that we got posted on the Eagles YouTube page and also on the PhiladelphiaEagles.com, the Eagles mobile app as well. It's a different spin on our film room segment. Usually, you guys know if you've watched them in the past, I usually pick 5 or 6 plays, right? Handful of plays that are big highlights, things that show his skill set. For this segment, I thought let's make this a little bit more current, kind of show you exactly what I do behind the scenes. And it was more about, here are the plays that I tagged of Jalen Reagor as I was studying him, things that really stood out to me. So we went through 40 some odd plays. I think it was 47 plays of Jalen Reagor. You got to see me in my film room, in my basement, kind of watching him. So a little bit of a different spin on our film room segment. Hope you go check that out over on the Eagles YouTube page. You can check it out on my Twitter account as well, at EaglesXO. So, we just posted Jalen Reagor 2 weeks ago. Jalen Hurts went up last week. This week it'll be Davion Taylor, so make sure you go check that out when that gets posted. All right, some other takeaways for me. I loved what Amani talked about in terms of defeating press coverage and how everything was natural. There was no thinking involved. It wasn't like, okay, I'm going to come up and he's going to press me and this is the move that I'm going to use to win off the line of scrimmage. Whatever the defender tried to do, he knew that it was already in his mind. Like, he didn't have to think about it. If he was going to try and jam me with his inside hand, if I've got an inside release, here's the move I'm going to do. And I'm not even going to think about it. He had it all worked out because he had repped that time after time after time after time. To me, that's why whenever we talk about the intangibles, the stuff we can't see from the film, the stuff that you hope to be able to glean from these guys when you talk about, the interview process and the background work that scouts do, you don't necessarily see what's going through a player's mind when you're watching them on film. You can only hope to glean that from that background work, from the interview process. Hey, you ask a player, what's going through your mind here on this play? What are you thinking about pre-snap? Amani talked about all the pre-snap checks that a receiver will go through as he's going to the line of scrimmage. And then once the ball is snapped, you don't get a sense of what that guy's actually doing unless you talk to him or you get a sense of what his work ethic is like. And you need to have those traits, those mental traits, those toughness traits. You need to have that if you're going to find success at the NFL level. It's not just all about physical abilities. So, when Amani Toomer talks about, hey, I knew whatever the corner was going to do to me in press coverage, I had a move that I was going to be able to work off of that. I think that's stuff that's got to be repped, and you have to have the work ethic to put that amount of reps in. And so, to me, I thought that was really cool stuff there from Amani Toomer. He talked about how quickly he could tell if rookies had it or didn't. That seems to be a universal sentiment from players every single time I ask that question. Coaches as well. And look, guys always get better. It's not necessarily all about, oh, this guy had great, put up great numbers as a rookie versus this guy that didn't. It's not that. It's more about when a guy gets into the meeting room, when a guy gets onto the practice field, when he gets into early preseason, and you get to see what he looks like. I shouldn't even say preseason because it's decided by that point for a lot of these players is, do they have what it takes mentally, or do they have what it takes to be able to reach their ceiling and be able to stick in the NFL? It seems more often than not that a lot of players that I talk to really have that sentiment. When they get a guy into the room for the first time, they know whether or not that guy has staying power or not. And then I couldn't help but think, I remember thinking this actually when I was doing this interview at the very end there when Amani Toomer was talking about the play speed, right? And guys that, they just have that ability to get off and go. I couldn't help but think, I remember when we were down there, John Hightower, the receiver from Boise. There was a kid, Jonathan Johnson from Missouri, who was down there as well. But those were the only 2 receivers I felt that kind of fit the bill with what he was talking about. John Hightower certainly was the one that stood out to me in my mind. And the Eagles ended up taking John Hightower in April's draft. So I thought that was really interesting that he talked about just that play speed, being so important, that ability to get off the ball. I thought that stuff, the get off stuff, was so important there that Amani hit on. And really, it kind of takes me back. We had the talk with Chuck Smith, who the pass rush guru, who teaches all some of the best pass rushers around the NFL. To me, I've always equated wide receivers with pass rushers, just like I do offensive linemen with corners. Because when you look at those positions and what they're asked to do, how they're asked to attack the guys on the other side of the field, there's a lot of similar body movements, a lot of similar playing styles, and what you're asked to do, a lot of different thought processes that those guys are asked. To me, you talk about, hey, get off is so important for a pass rusher. It's so important for a wide receiver. You talk about the hand usage, even what Amani was saying earlier about getting off press coverage. A lot of pass rushers will say, yeah, like I don't go into a single down saying this is the move I'm definitely going to use. They're going to have some reactionary thoughts there, some reactionary actions to how the offensive tackle is going to play them. So many similarities between those two positions. So those are some of my takeaways from that interview with Amani Toomer. Hope you guys enjoyed them. Thanks so much to Amani and all of you out there for your continued support of this show and all the rest of our podcast offerings on PhiladelphiaEagles.com. All that being said, I think that'll do it. Another show in the books here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade. For everybody here at the Duffy House, I am Fran Duffy. We will talk to you next week.